for us, we was able to just have the paste set up and
Mhm.
then go straight into the React and the JavaScript and the JS to write our code to run the website.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's something that we have to do out here because I haven't seen any of the React setup. So I don't know how that works. So if we're even gonna be writing a React script stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mila. And a lot of people kind of have that question when they're first looking at the advanced pre-work as far as, how do I write this? What do I write this in? And while React is a very quick framework, some
Yeah.
of you are applying for the React class, so we don't expect you to build this advanced project in React. You don't have to use React at all if you don't want to. If that's what you're already kind of familiar with, and that's the easiest place for you to come to the project from, then that's totally fine. And you can do like create React app, you can do Vite, you can do whatever is most comfortable for setting up your framework, or you can also do like your copy and paste to be able to get your file structures the way they need to be for things to run. So either way is acceptable. We've had people submit projects that were built in Node. We've had people submit projects that were built in React. Again, since you're applying for Node React classes or Ruby on Rails
Yeah.
class, you don't have to build it in that. You can have it just be plain vanilla JavaScript, and that's totally acceptable as well too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right, that's a good starting point too. I'm glad you brought up that question. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share. I know some of you have not started yet. Some of you have kind of started and gotten your feet wet. Some of you are in the middle of it. So I'll take a couple minutes to start with and just kind of go through the instruction pages that hopefully you've already gotten, so that way you can kind of plan and work through there. Before we get started, Prudence, you had a question. Go ahead.
Hey everyone. I'm glad to be here and thankful for everything you guys doing. Real quick, real fast. My question is do we have anyone who wanna join the team? Because you get things done when there's a say teamwork always work, right? Teamwork always work. So me, I'm looking for people I can team with so we can get. I started out, but I want some dude or some fellow who want to work together so to finish to knock out the pre-work quickly. So I don't know if something you already doing or you want to do just let's get together and then we can just schedule something and then uh we can work our way up to finish that. That's just a suggestion and see a request. I mean, at the same time as a request. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to use the chat to connect with each other if you'd like to. You can share your emails with one another. You can direct message people that are on the call tonight if you want to in that Zoom chat. So just pull up the chat feature for Zoom and you can chat with each other while we're talking, going through things. Your work does need to be your own work. It's okay for you to collaborate as far as like, oh, I used this resource that helped me understand it. Or you can kind of say, I looked at the developmental documentation for this API that I'm going to be using, and I understand this out of it. Is that what you were getting to? Is that how you understood it too? So you can have some collaboration, but all of your coding does need to be your own coding work. So no, multiple people working together to build a project together. So that is one thing that I just wanted to point out, but collaboration is definitely welcome and it's encouraged when you're in the program. Throughout the program, collaborating is always helpful because that's one of the best ways to learn is by teaching somebody what you know. So to cover that, just make sure that everything's good there. All right, let me go ahead and screen share then, and that way we can walk through kind of these instructions together, and hopefully it'll help kind of clarify and get everybody organized so that way you feel like you're in a pretty good place to be able to get the pre-work done between now and March 31st. As a reminder, March 31st is that deadline, so you want to be sure that you're submitting the work to us by then. We'll be taking several weeks to look at all of the submissions. We've had one of our largest application pools that we've had before. Over 600 people applied this time around. And we're going to be accepting as many people as we can. On average, usually only half of the people who apply submit their pre-work. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm 1 in 600. No, you're the numbers get gradually smaller as people either aren't able to turn it in this time, or they say actually starting in the fall would be better than starting in summer. So it does scale down, and your odds aren't 1 in 600. Your odds are much better than that. Okay, so what we're looking at right now is the advanced pre-work assignment page. I'm going to drop this link in the chat. So if anybody hasn't been to that yet, then you can be at it, taking a look at it, working through it together. We do have our pre-work assignment broken up into a couple of parts. Part 1 is going to be covering just sort of your plan and research and getting yourself ready. And then part 2 is going to be building your code and testing it. Let's see here. We had a question from Grant. Yeah, go ahead, Grant.
Hello. So when you mean by March 30th, is it like during the day of March 30th, or is it like midnight on to March 30th? You know, that's always the thing that everyone needs to know.
Yeah. By midnight, the night of March 31st. So the very end of Sunday, March 31st, that's when we need to have it in by. And
Okay.
obviously you all are in different time zones, so just your local time zone is fine. If you're getting it in like, 1:25 a.m. Monday morning, that's okay too. It's not going to be this hard and fast. Nope, you're 30 seconds late, forget it. We have some grace and some mercy there, so don't worry too much about that. But ideally get it in by Sunday night, end of that day, Sunday, March 31st.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, so the general instructions give you kind of a good overview. There's a short little video I had made before we had kind of set up our new system for walking you through what the pre-work assignment is. Feel free to watch it. When we talk about grace and mercy, have some grace and mercy when you watch that too. It was a long day when I made that video. And then you'll work through part 1, work through part 2, submit your work. Again, that deadline's March 31st. We just talked about that. So the part 1 section is really kind of planning and researching and getting yourself prepared. Anytime you're going to make any kind of a coding project, you want to get all your ducks in a row and get yourself organized before you even start writing your first line of code. Since you have the option of choosing whatever API most appeals to you, plan to give yourself maybe about half an hour or an hour at least to look through your options and decide which one you want. Obviously, these are all dealing with different data sets, so there are different data structures that they have. You might feel more comfortable looking at the response that you'd get back from an API call to one over the other, or maybe one's just more interesting to you, and even if it's a challenge, you want to go for the challenge. It's whatever you decide. There's the basic weather API, Open Media, Spotify, Swappy Tech, which is Star Wars films, Marvel for people who are comic book fans. Sorry, we don't have DC comics on there, folks. Arctic for art lovers, dog and cat API, and a sample API for coffee lovers. So each of these is going to have their own documentation. The links that you see here will take you to their documentation so that you can take a look. So for example, if I were to go to the Art Institute of Chicago, then I get to their main documentation page, which is here. Documentation can be intimidating, especially if you're still fairly new, but it gives you a good resource. It's almost like a little glossary or a encyclopedia, if I'm really going to date myself, to be able to take a look through what information they have, how they have their data structured, so that way you know how to tap into those different pockets of data. It's always good to read through the introduction or quick start that's provided on those documentation. They let you know, what the address is like that you're going to have to ping in your API call. They let you know if there are any additional additional features they have as far as like being able to query and any kind of search parameters that you can use, that kind of a thing. They'll break down as far as like artworks would be the ending slug for the URL to be able to hit artworks, search ID, various things of that nature. What you want to look for that you'll probably reference the most as you're building things is going to be information about what your response data is going to look like. So further down, they have an example of the response would look something like this. And that way you have an idea of, okay, if I'm wanting to pull the title to display that on my web page for the user, then I need to make sure that I'm drilling through to get the title and I'm referencing it as title. Or if I want the image, then I'm drilling through config to be able to get the image and referencing that image there to be able to access it. So taking a little bit of time to pick one out, overview them, pick one out, and then dive deeper into their development documentation. Wow, that's a lot of D's, that's hard to say. Will be helpful for getting you kind of organized and set up to start with. The general structure for your project, so regardless of what API you decide to use, the general structure is it's going to have to be a public GitHub repository. Be sure that it's public. We've had some people submit before on a private, and it's like, we can't see it. Fix it and resubmit, please. You have to have an HTML document minimum for your, the basis for your page, for your index. You have to have a minimum of a CSS document to be able to style that page. It's fine to be using things like bootstrapping or anything similar where it sort of gives you a CSS structure or a CSS sort of default or template to begin with. Just be sure that you are customizing that so that way you're demonstrating, I know how to read CSS, I know how to work with that. For the JavaScript file, that's where you're going to have your API call. It needs to hit 2 endpoints. So for example, when we were looking at this response data for the art, then you'll want to show an image would be one endpoint, and then a title would be another endpoint. So maybe one page would have a list of all of the titles that they have available through Art Institute of Chicago. And maybe the second page would show all of the images in like a gallery view. So those would be your 2 points. One would be the images, one would be the titles. If you're using a different API from what the art one is, for Star Wars, you could have one that lists characters, one that lists films. For weather, you could have one that lists weather conditions, sunny, rainy, cloudy, and one that lists high temperatures or low temperatures. For the dog and cat ones, it could be one that lists breeds and then one that lists like lifespans or temperaments. So as long as you're hitting 2 different endpoints and displaying them separately, as opposed to just, hey, give me all the data you got, here it is just dumped on one page. We want to see that you know how to kind of parse through that data and pull out pieces the user might want to see and show them on either separate pages or have your single page re-render with a different call to show the additional information through like a navigation click or a button click or things like that. Okay, that gives you kind of a quick overview as far as like structure and the basis of where you're starting. Do we have any questions up to this point? I want to pause and make sure we're covering things if there are questions out there. Yeah, Jacinta, go ahead. And if I'm saying your name wrong, please correct me as soon as you make your voice available.
Oh, no, you said it right. So I actually completed my project and I just wanted to make sure because that I'm meeting the requirement. So when you said that you have to have like 2 endpoints, or sorry, when you said 2 models, so for like the cat API, which I use, if I'm displaying, let's say, the breed and then a picture of the breed, is that 2 models, or do you mean like I have to have 2 different fetches with different endpoints?
You'll want to do 2 different fetches with 2 different endpoints. So it's fine to like display an image with the breed title, but you'll also want to have either a re-rendering of your page that shows maybe breed listing and their temperaments, or breed listing and their lifespans, or something like that. Or even just, here's the catalog of all breeds, and then here's the page that shows the breeds with the images. So you want to make sure that you have more than just here's one page and here's all of the information that you can get from this API in one solid piece.
Okay.
Is that
So
helpful?
yeah, I think so, because the way I did it, I had a like drop down menu and I like populated all the, like I manipulated the data that I got back with like all the cat breeds and made it so that only the options in the drop-down menu were just the names of the breeds. And then they click on that, and then that takes them to a page with more information about the breeds. I think I met that requirement.
So, Grant, you had a question too?
Yes, I am using the weather app, and I'm using jQuery to dynamically change the information every time. So is that okay, or do I need another page?
No, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, you can have a single page and then be basically re-rendering the content of the page through navigation clicks or, you know, whatever methodology to be able to show the second piece of information. That's totally
Okay.
fine to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Farkhande.
Yeah, I have a question. So I am in the middle of the coffee lover. I just have a question. Two endpoints that I found is the hot coffee and iced coffee. Is that work? So for different.
Yeah, you could have a page that would be showing all the hot recipes and then a page showing all the cold ones. Yeah.
Okay. And I have another question for the README file. Do we need to add a summary of the how we think about the planning the website, or just the use of the
A summary is helpful because it helps us see kind of your thought process going into it. So that's definitely welcome. The minimum that you'd want to have on there is at least how to be able to get the code to run. And if you want to incorporate like these are the various items that I use. So if you used like Material UI for icons, or you know, if there was any other tidbits that you kind of incorporated in, then you can say these are the additional technologies that I used in my project. But the very minimum, your README file should be describing just how to be able to get your code to run, whether that's, hey, I've got it deployed, click this link and you're there, or whether it's, you know, download it, you know, run npm install, and then go from there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I just wondering, so I did my job, but I just wondering, is there any like previous submitted work that we can like get an idea from that?
I was really hoping I'd be able to, but I didn't hear back from a couple of people that I had reached out to about if I could share their work or not. And I hate sharing people's work without getting their explicit approval. So I don't have an example to show, unfortunately.
Thank you. I just wonder that, is it something that I just want to make sure that I meet all the requirement, because of that I asking. It can
Yeah,
be.
and that's the best way to gauge your like how likely it is that you'll be accepted is if you're hitting all of these requirements as far as public GitHub, you've got the minimum of the HTML, CSS, JavaScript files in your README file. Your README file's letting us know how to run your code. You've got some kind of navigation to be able to show those two different data models, those two different endpoints. You're using the get to be able to do it. And it's, you know, fairly clean code. Obviously, we know there might be some things that you run into that it's like, I just can't figure out a way to clear this error, or, you know, it works otherwise, except for this, you know, one little hiccup or whatever. You know, we'll be looking at the whole project. We're not going to be nitpicking about very specific items like, oh, well, you know, they could have done this better. We know that you all are beginners and that you're coming into this to learn. And so we do take that into account, but we do want to make sure that you're, you know, working to make sure that you meet specifications, because that's important, whether you're a beginner or whether you've been 30 years into the job.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions out there up to this point?
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get the number 3 of the content, like issue new get request for the link data to
This item
display.
here, Will?
Yeah. I don't understand this sentence.
Yeah. So basically you want to have two get requests, one that's going to obtain one point of information and then one that's going to obtain the other. So for example, like with the cats one that pulls in breeds, one that pulls in temperaments. For a weather API, you'd want one that pulls in the temperatures, one that pulls in the weather conditions. So you'll just want to make sure that you're including two gets to be able to gather in that information for those two different data models that you're displaying. Is that helpful, Will, or is it still kind of murky?
I still don't get it because
Yeah.
no, I will choose my pre-work. I will choose the weather API.
Mhm.
So I intend to display first page. No, so in the content, yeah. No. The requirement for the content that I will display the current weather and the forecast weather for example for 5 days. So I will display two data set on two pages, right? So
Yes.
this is the first two requirement. But for the get, the third requirement is for the get. I don't get that. I don't understand what should I do for that requirement.
Oh, okay. So you're using one get to pull in all the data, and then you're rendering the pages separately off of one get, is what you mean?
Mm, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm
Okay,
trying to wrap my head around it to
okay,
make
can
sure.
you show like show me again the requirement for content? Yeah, the content. Yes, the content has three requirement, right?
Yep.
For first the display at least two models. So I will choose like the current weather, and another is the forecast weather for 5 days. Yes, and so the second requirement is we need to show two-page navigation, right? Include navigation. So the first page I will show the current weather, and another navigation is the forecast
Cast. Mhm.
for 5 days. Yes. So I understand that two requirements. So the first one is I need to show the data set or what?
Yeah, so like your first get would be when the page first loads, or if you're doing any kind of like zip code search or anything like that, your current weather would be one get. And then for them to like click forecast on your navigation to go from, okay, I'm viewing only the current weather to now I want to view the forecast weather, you would have a new get request for them that would be triggered when they click forecast versus when they're viewing current. So that way, yeah, so that way when they go to look at the new one, then it's doing a new get request to see that new information. Does
okay.
that help make it a little bit better, Will?
Okay, so this means when the user click on the link, they will show a new request data,
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yes.
okay, I see.
Yeah, like it almost like it refreshes it kind of in a way.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yes.
Yeah. There was a question in the chat as far as, is it okay to submit a project in TypeScript and React? Yes, that's totally fine. You don't have to use any advanced frameworks or technologies to build it. You can build it like I threw together a very, very simple, like you can even do something as simple as this, just a README file, an index.js, a style with all of your code in each of those documents, and have it go from there. It doesn't have to be deployed. So it can be as simple and basic as just a 4-document repository to be able to get the job done. Or if you're wanting to incorporate more, you're welcome to incorporate more. We've had, I think, a couple of questions through email too, just in regards to, is it going to increase my likelihood of being accepted if I go for something fancier, if I try and build it in something fancier, or, if I'm using TypeScript or React, or if I'm using Node to be able to build out my project. And no, it won't matter as long as you're meeting the requirements, whether you did it in vanilla JavaScript like this, or you did it using some kind of framework. We're still going to be looking at, did you meet the requirements? How comfortable and organized is your code? Just overall as an applicant, is this a program that would benefit you?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
So in the pre-work, what is there any tip or criteria that we should do to meet your requirement? Like what should we show our skill to meet your requirement?
Even just the basics as far as, clean JavaScript code, understanding HTML, CSS to be able to implement, and having those functional APIs. Those are really just the main things. So like the functionality that I've got up on the screen right now, those are the things that we're really looking for. If your file structure is a little bit different because you are using React or TypeScript or using any other kind of, bootstrapping, anything like that, your structure can be different, and that's okay, as long as you have a minimum of what will get that information presented on a site. And then, of course, content, making sure that you're hitting those 2 points. And then functionality is really probably the area you want to focus on the most when you're checking your work before you submit it, to make sure that we're getting the code to run, navigation's working between those models, code is readable and well organized. If you do have any kind of user interactivity, like a search field, that you're handling error cases. And then just being thoughtful about your styling, not making it too cluttered, not making it where it's hard to see if you've got buzzing colors of red and blue next to each other, things like that. So functionality is probably one thing you'll definitely want to do with a fine-tooth comb and take a close look at on your project before submitting it.
Yes. And is the UI design is important or just no? It's just
No, it's not as much. Some people have made some really fancy looking UIs. Some
yes,
people
yes,
kept it very simple and straightforward, and that's okay. Because we know some folks are doing it in a smaller time frame with bigger obstacles in their personal life getting in their way of being able to devote the amount of time during that pre-work period that they'd like to. So it's totally fine. Functionality, content are the things that you really want to focus on. Yeah.
okay, got you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions related to the work that I can help answer? I just want to be mindful of everybody's time, and I know we're getting close to that end of that 6:30 time frame. All right, I did want to answer, there was a question real quick in the chat from Ishmael about providing information about the apprenticeship. The apprenticeship is a pretty competitive, program to be able to get into. We are building our support system so that way, even if you don't get accepted into our apprenticeship program, you do still have support with career development to be able to take a look at your resume, take a look at your portfolios and your profiles, give you some mock technical interview practice, behavioral interview practice, give you sort of like coding examples, things that can help build your portfolio. So there's more systems that we're putting in place to support people that graduate out of our program but aren't getting into the apprenticeship, because our apprenticeship availability is really just beholden to how many of our apprentices are graduating out and how much infrastructure do we have to support bringing on additional projects to the ones we already have running in our development shop. So it can vary from time to time as far as how many we accept. We had gone, I think it was about 9 or 10 months where we weren't able to accept any of our graduates because of technology issues with everybody getting laid off. So then our apprentices weren't graduating into positions because tech companies weren't hiring. Luckily, we've had some changes to that. We most recently brought on 14 new apprentices in the past couple of months. A lot of those folks who had been on wait list over that 9 to 10 month period when there was a sort of crashing of tech jobs out there. So it is competitive. Don't put all of your eggs in that basket, but work through the program knowing that you're building your skills and getting yourself in a better position to be a strong applicant candidate for applying for jobs, and know that we are working on skills to be able to better support you whether you go apprenticeship or not at the end of the advanced class and practicum. All right. Any other questions out there that I can help answer? I'm sure you probably also have some questions about the apprenticeship as far as is it remote or whatever. It is full-time, it is remote. You do have flexibility to your hours, but there will be times that you have to meet with your project team. Compensation, I think it's 30,000 a year right now with benefits, like benefits are included, but that number also can increase. It doesn't go down, but it can increase if we're able to get better grant funding support for a year, or if we have more apprentices that are in like a higher living expense area that need to have a higher income because they're in, San Francisco or Boston or someplace where it's like, you can't live off of anything like that. So hopefully that information helps for anybody that had questions about apprenticeship. All right. Is everybody feeling a little bit better or feeling pretty good as far as you've gotten the information that you need tonight? Or is there anything that I haven't covered that needs to be covered? I want to make sure everybody has things set. Yeah, go ahead, Grant.
I just want to make sure. So I think I'm hitting 2. I have the page automatically loads the data, and then I also have a search bar that connected to a different API that gives me location data. So then you can ask for that to get new weather data.
Yes, yeah. So if you have something that populates as like a default, and then you're using a feature to be able to like access a different area for the weather or something like that, then that is fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is your like once you hit search on the search, that's doing a new GET request to be able to get the information for that specific locality, right?
Yeah, it's basically I'm getting the location data because the longitude and latitude is what the weather API needs.
Yeah.
So I'm using a different API to give me the longitude and latitudes of places that they have,
Oh, okay, off of
and
like a
then
zip code or something.
and then
Yeah.
it drills back down into it.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like it's doing exactly what it needs to.
Cool.
Yeah, there is an intro to programming. So the intro level pre-work one is going to be starting very soon. I'm running a little bit over. If anybody's sticking around for the intro ones, then that's what that's at. And Ashley just messaged me, I need to hop off this one. So I have to end this and then the intro one will begin. So anybody that wants to stick around for the intro one, just use the link to be able to join back in. Good luck with your pre-work. We're excited to see all of your work. Thank you for joining us tonight, and email us if you have any questions or need further clarification. Thanks,
And
everybody.
actually,
Oh, yeah.
now is it the same link for the intro? I forgot because I can actually just post the intro link in the chat too, so they can hop on that one.
Perfect. Perfect. I'll let you go ahead and take care of that, Ashley.
All right, 1 second, guys. All right, I just put the link in the chat to, now I'm not sure if this is the same link as this one, but yeah, if you guys want to just hop on that link.
Do we need to end this call then, Ashley, and then?
Yeah, I would say in this call.
Okay. All right. Has
Did you
everybody
put
had a
that
chance?
link in the chat one more time, please? Somehow it ran away from my screen.
Sure thing.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Put it in again.
So you want us to join this one and just disconnect the other one?
That's right. Yeah, you'll be able to click on that one to be able to join the intro one that will start now.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.